The final release of Ubuntu 17.04 just appeared a few days ago, and here I'm going to compare the 7 major desktop flavors: Ubuntu with the Unity desktop, Ubuntu Budgie with the Budgie desktop, Ubuntu GNOME with the GNOME 3 desktop, Kubuntu with the KDE Plasma 5 desktop, Lubuntu with the LXDE desktop, Ubuntu Mate with the Mate desktop, and Xubuntu with the XFCE desktop. I put the default first and the others in alphabetical order. This is not an order of preference. I have omitted Ubuntu Studio, which uses the XFCE desktop, and Ubuntu Kylin, which is designed for the Chinese market and which I have no experience. First, let me mention the features that all of the Ubuntus have in common. Version 17.04 is an interim release supported for 9 months. So if you want the long-term release, you'll either have to go back to 16.04 or wait another year for 18.04. I generally reinstall Ubuntu once every 6 months anyway, so the fact that it's an interim release doesn't bother me at all. This version uses the Linux kernel series 4.10. And by default, it now uses a swap file rather than a swap partition. The swap file will be sized at 5% of the available space, or 2 gigabytes, whichever is less. Therefore, you don't have to provide a separate swap partition. However, let me warn you that if you have an existing Linux swap partition on any of your attached drives, Ubuntu 17.04 will try to use it unless you specifically select "Do not use this partition" during installation. Installations using logical volume management will continue to include swap space in the LVM partition. Ubuntu 17.04 supports driverless printing using IPP Internet Printing Protocol, or Apple AirPrint if your printer supports it. Mine does not, so I haven't tried it. The release notes give instructions on using it. LibreOffice has been upgraded to version 5.3. Part or all of it is provided by default with all of the flavors except Lubuntu, which uses AbiWord and GNumeric, but you can install LibreOffice 5.3 on Lubuntu also. There are probably many changes to the Ubuntu repositories of which I am not yet aware, but one that I noticed is that Simple Screen Recorder is now available in the repositories and no longer requires a PPA or Personal Program Archive to install it. I compared the memory use for each flavor in 2 situations, one with the desktop only active and one with a YouTube video running. Now these figures should be taken as order of magnitude only because they can fluctuate wildly, and I should say that I came up with different results when I tried the Beta 2 version than I did with this final release. So there may have been some changes, or perhaps some graphical effects were running or not running in one version or the other. I used the graphical environment that came by default. I didn't make any changes in it. Now, Ubuntu GNOME comes with the traditional Xorg display server and also with the Wayland display server. You can switch between them at the login screen. So GNOME with the Xorg display server used the most memory, 1,331 megabytes with the desktop only, and 1,536 megabytes with the YouTube video playing. Wayland was slightly more efficient at 1229 megabytes with the desktop only, and 1536 with the YouTube video playing. I should say that in beta, the Wayland version was considerably lighter than the Xorg version. I don't know what changed between the two releases, but I suspect you will find that eventually Wayland is going to prove to be much lighter than Xorg. Next came Unity 7 with 1126 megabytes with the desktop and 1536 with the YouTube video playing. And below that, Budgie with 1024 megabytes with the desktop only and 1444 with the YouTube video playing. Unity 8, which is just experimental in this point, and it appears that it's not going to be developed further, is available in Ubuntu. Again, you can switch at the login screen, and it was considerably lighter than Unity 7, 984 megabytes with the desktop only and 1331 with the YouTube video playing. The Mate desktop used 650 megabytes with the desktop only and 1024 with the YouTube video. I should say that again in beta, Mate used considerably less than this, and it's possible that the number of graphic effects has changed between the two versions. You can probably adjust these figures by subtracting some graphical features. Kubuntu, surprisingly, came in below Mate with 410 megabytes with the desktop only and 828 megabytes with the YouTube video playing. In Beta 2, Kubuntu used more resources than Mate, so these two switched. But this represents a considerable improvement for Kubuntu. Then came Xubuntu with 327 megabytes with the desktop only and 668 with the YouTube video playing. And the most efficient was Lubuntu with 276 megabytes with the desktop only and 634 megabytes with the YouTube video playing. I'm going to take a very quick look at all of the Ubuntu desktops without going into any detail at all. If you want to see more detail, look at my previous or subsequent videos on the subject of each desktop. Now this, of course, is Ubuntu with the default Unity 7 desktop. It will continue to be the default desktop until 1804 when GNOME will be the default desktop. So if you're new to Linux, I wouldn't spend a lot of time learning Unity. I would try one of the others. But if you've been using Unity, you can continue to use it in version 1604 until 2021 or until July 2018 using the interim releases. Now this is the familiar Unity launcher. You can find more applications by going from Home over to Applications, and then here click on see 77 more results, and you can scroll down and see all the major applications on your system. A much faster way, though, is just to type something into the search bar. For instance, if I type in Libra, before I get more than 3 letters entered, I've already got the LibreOffice applications displayed. There are a few adjustments you can make with the installed system settings. You can change the desktop background, and notice when you do, the predominant color shows up in the launcher. You can also change the size of the launcher. but you can make a lot more changes with the Unity Tweak tool. However, the Tweak tool is not provided by default. You have to download it, and you can find it in Ubuntu software. I have already downloaded it, and I just want to show you a couple of other tweaks you can make. Ubuntu comes with one workspace active. I've made 4 workspaces active. And by going to the bottom of the screen, I can display the contents of all 4 workspaces, and I can switch workspaces from one to the other. By going to the bottom right of the screen, I can show the contents of the current workspace, including the minimized applications. And I've included the show desktop icon so I can minimize all open applications. Using the Tweak tool, you can also move the launcher to the bottom of the screen. There's also a rudimentary version of Unity 8 which you can get to by logging out and selecting it on the login screen. However, I'm not going to do that now. It's very rudimentary and it's not going to be developed further, at least for the time being, but you can look at it if it interests you. This is the Budgie desktop, which originated with Solus, and it appears here for the first time as an official Ubuntu Budgie flavor. However, it was available as Budgie Remix in version 16.10, and you'll find much more detail in my review of version 16.10. This is Budgie version 10.3, and it includes an expanded number of GNOME applications, version 3.2.4. It's 100% compatible with the GNOME stack. Over on the left is the plank dock. Then on the upper left is the Budgie menu, which also appears as the brisk menu in Ubuntu Mate. This is a system tray with the normal utilities, and at the upper right, the icon takes you to the Raven control panel. Here you see existing applets, notifications. There are none. And this gear over at the right takes you to Budgie settings. Now, these are general settings, appearance, etc. And these are panel settings. You can add and remove items from the top panel. Now the plank dock is a place from which you can launch applications. LibreOffice Writer. And if you launch applications that are not in the plank dock, such as the text editor, you can right-click on the icon and say Keep in Dock, and it will remain in the plank dock after you close it. Now this dock is configurable. Using plank preferences. Here I've moved it to the bottom and enabled icon zoom. But I'm going to leave it over at the left. Now when an application is open its icon appears in the dock, and you can see at the left that there's a very small light dot. This is the only thing that indicates the application is open. Of course, when you minimize it, you really need that indication to know what's open. To me, that's really very unsatisfactory. But things can be changed. Now you can get rid of the plank dock simply by pressing Control, then right-click, and you'll get a drop-down menu, and you just click on Quit. It's gone. Now to keep it out, you have to remove it from the startup applications, but that's easy to do. So now how do you control things? Well, I reconfigured things in my review of 1610, and I'm just going to go to that new configuration without further explanation. Now I've added something called the icon task list to the upper panel to replace the plank dock. I've created a lower panel with a text-based task list in the middle and a workspace switcher on the right. So now when I open an application, you can see that it's in the task list. So if I minimize it, I can see what's down there. I much prefer this arrangement, but you can configure it the way you like. This is Ubuntu GNOME with the GNOME Shell 3.24. Evolution and GNOME software are both in versions 3.22, and a few applications, including the Nautilus File Manager and the terminal, are still in version 3.20. The same list of GNOME applications used on other Ubuntu desktops, version 17.04. You have the choice of two display servers, the traditional Xorg or the new Wayland, and can change by logging out and selecting your preference at login. Xorg is the default. Wayland has an advantage in speed and lightness, but some applications still require Xorg to run properly, and among them is Simple Screen Recorder, which is why I'm using it. Since GNOME will become the default Ubuntu desktop in 1804, you can use this opportunity to become familiar with it. My understanding is that the GNOME project will be folded into the default Ubuntu project and disappear as a separate distribution. Now you can click on Activities to get the dash here. Or you can use the Windows key or Super key, as Linux users prefer to call it. And when you do, you see Open Applications, even though they may be minimized. If you click on this matrix, you can show all the applications. Takes a while, apparently. These are all, this is frequent. And you see a couple of dots over here. You can page down by going to the next dot or page up by going to the previous dot. And when you add more applications, you'll get more dots. Over on the far right, you have workspaces. There's always one more workspace available than the one you're using. And so if you add things, you'll get additional workspaces. So I'm going to the second workspace, and I'm going to open the File Manager. Now when I look on Activities, I have a third workspace available, and this is workspace 1, but you notice the workspaces don't show the minimized applications, only the unminimized applications. So that if I go here and I unminimize this, now when I go back, it's shown in the workspace. You can select a fixed number of workspaces. Now, to do very much with the GNOME, you have to use the tweak tool. And it's included by default. I'm going to add this to the favorites also. I'm not going to go into detail, but I'm going to use the tweak tool as it comes to reconfigure the desktop. Right, so now I've reconfigured GNOME 3. Notice that I've added the date to the time. I now have an application menu instead of the dash. I also have a places menu. Now there's no system menu as you did have in GNOME 2, but you can get system information over here by clicking on this little wrench. There are the system's settings. With the application menu, if I want to see the activities overview, I can. And you notice here I've also enabled a fixed number of desktops, 4. I can have any number I want. So if I open the calculator and I open the text editor, you can see that I now have a window list at the bottom, similar to what I would have had in GNOME 2. So if you want to reconfigure GNOME 3, you can do it. There's also a choice of GNOME Classic at login, but I've never found that very satisfactory. You can right-click on the desktop to change the background. It's a little slow in going. There's several new ones here. So that's just a brief look at GNOME 3.24. One version or another is going to be the future default of Ubuntu. Ubuntu 17.04 features the KDE Plasma 5.9.4 desktop with KDE applications version 16.12.3. Of course, it also fully supports DTK Plus applications such as LibreOffice, GIMP, and Firefox. I've already done several demonstrations of how to configure the KDE Plasma 5 desktop, so I'm not really going to go into that here, but you can look at my other videos on that subject. I've already changed the menu to the application menu. It was the application launcher, which I don't like. One thing rather strange here is that under education, you have two subcategories, mathematics and science, but each one of them has the same subcategory, LibreOffice Math. So I think they could have eliminated something here, but that's a minor point. I've made a few changes just to show you some of the things you can do. I chose the Breeze Dark theme, and I've enabled 4 workspaces. There was originally just 1. And I've also enabled some of the screen edge effects. For instance, when I move my cursor to the right edge of the screen, it shows a workspace grid. It shows all of the current workspaces and what's in them, both the minimized applications and the unminimized applications. For instance, when I go to this workspace, you'll see that Image Magic is minimized. When I click on the left edge, it shows the contents of the current workspace, including the minimized applications. Now if I click on this minimized application, it unminimizes. If I wanted to minimize again, I'd have to use the control at the upper right. I wanted to mention that Discover, which is the default software manager for Kubuntu, is now working well. Originally it had a lot of problems, but they seem to have been resolved. It seems the only way to scroll down here is to left click and hold your finger down and drag these applications up and down. It works, but it's a little awkward. However, there are still a few bugs in Discover. It closed suddenly without warning. And I've had a few other glitches with this current version of Plasma 5.9.4. So it isn't a perfect system yet. It's still in development, but it's a lot better than it was. One thing about the Breeze Dark theme, when you select it for Qt-based applications, it also works with GTK Plus applications. For instance, LibreOffice. However, as you can see, these controls at the top are rather hard to see. It's light gray on dark gray. So I might have to choose a different theme, or I might choose a different icon theme. So that's just a quick look at KDE Plasma 5.9.4. This is Lubuntu 17.04. I'm not going to spend much time with it because it hasn't changed very much, but it still works and it still has a healthy future. There was a rumor that it was going to switch to LXQt this time, but there have been such rumors in the past, and like the past rumors, this one didn't materialize. It's still using LXDE, but that's still the lightest weight of the major desktops, so there's no reason why you shouldn't continue to use it. I have configured it a little bit. I have a dark panel now, and I have a different window border. Here's leaf pad. Other than that, I haven't done too much to it. Probably the biggest change is that it now uses GNOME software instead of the old Lubuntu software center, although this has now been renamed software. And it also comes with Synaptic Package Manager, unlike Ubuntu with the Unity desktop. The only thing it lacks that I would really like to see is window snaps. If you want them, you can install the XF window manager, but then you'll sacrifice a little of the lightness. Otherwise, if you have an older computer, or if you'd like your new computer to work blazingly fast, this may be the right distribution for you. The Mate 1.18.0 desktop environment and suite of applications is now based on GTK3 Plus only, but still retains the look and functionality of GNOME 2, which has made Mate so popular. The welcome utility and software boutique are much admired features of Ubuntu Mate. The software boutique, which only has a limited selection of software, is the only graphical package manager that comes by default. I strongly suggest using it to install Synaptic and GNOME software before going much farther. So you go to More Software. Now I've already installed GNOME software. It's called Software. And I've already installed Synaptic Package Manager. There's another feature I'd like to mention. You can now install more than one package at a time from the software boutique. I'm going to click on Audacity, and up here it says bulk queue. I'm going to install the audio recorder, and you see a second item has been saved to bulk queue. So if I click on that, I get this invitation to apply changes, and this will install both of these items at once. I'm going to interrupt the video, of course. Audacity is installed, and now it's installing the audio recorder. Now it's finished, so I can close the screen. You can get both welcome screen and the software boutique from the menus also. Another feature is that the brisk menu, which is borrowed from the Solus project, is now available for installation like any other menu. You can right-click on the panel and say Add to Panel. And here you find the brisk menu. Just select it and click on Add. There it is. If you want to replace the existing menu, just right-click on it and say Remove from Panel. There it goes. Now I'm going to unlock the Firefox icon. Then I'm going to move the brisk menu. And I'm going to lock the brisk menu. So here it is, the brisk menu. Notice that now you can hover over the categories and you don't have to click on them. And this is a feature which is not even available in Ubuntu Budgie yet. Now if I go to the control center, I find Mate Tweak. And you may recall that under Panel, you can see at the top I have opportunity to select a panel layout to change the user interface. First, I'm going to save my current panel layout. Now there's the Cupertino, Fedora, GNOME 2. Most of these were already available in the previous version of Ubuntu Mate, but the Pantheon desktop is new, and it contains the brisk menu in addition to the Places and System menus from the default menu. They still look like they used to. In addition, it has this plank dock at the bottom. So those are two ways of getting the brisk menu. I'm going to go back to my custom tweak. You notice the plank has not left. You have to get rid of it. You can do that by pressing Control and then right click. You'll have an opportunity to quit. And there goes the dock. Otherwise, Mate is as beautiful and reliable as always. You can put as many launchers as you want to on the top panel. Just click on the selection and then drag it over to the panel. So for me, this is one of the Ubuntus to use. I don't really have to do anything to change it. But if you want to change it, of course, it's fairly easy to do. Now this is XFCE. I put it last only because it starts with an X. It's one of my favorite all-time desktop interfaces. I would have a hard time choosing between this and Mate as my favorite, but I like them both. And this hasn't changed much either, but it really doesn't have to. It works well. It has the whisker menu. It's not quite as light as Lubuntu, but it has window snaps, which are a great productivity feature in my view. And Xubuntu used to come with the lightweight Office applications too, but in the last few releases it's come with the LibreOffice suite. The Whisker menu has a search feature. And you notice I don't have to type in the beginning of the word. I typed in AUD and I got pulse audio volume control. It's now coming with more wallpapers than it used to come with. So that's the XFCE desktop, and that finishes my review of the 7 major Ubuntu flavors. This is XRAM Tech. Thanks for watching.